Sarah Martinez had always been different from her coworkers at the downtown accounting firm of Henderson Associates. While they discussed weekend shopping trips and reality TV shows, she remained quietly focused on her spreadsheets, her mind, often drifting to memories that couldn't be shared over coffee breaks. The small, intricate tattoo on her left wrist, a compass rose intertwined with coordinates that seemed random to anyone who glanced at it, had become a source of constant ridicule among her colleagues. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. It started innocently enough. Jennifer from HR had noticed the tattoo during a team meeting and made a passing comment about how unprofessional it looked. Within days, the whispers had grown into open mockery. "Look at Sarah trying to be edgy with her little sailor tattoo," they'd snicker during lunch. "Breaks. Did she get that at some spring break party?" The jokes became a daily ritual, with coworkers taking turns making increasingly cruel observations about what they assumed was the impulsive decision from Sarah's younger days. What they didn't know, what they couldn't possibly know, was that those seemingly random coordinates marked the exact location where Sarah had saved 17 lives during a classified humanitarian rescue operation in Syria 3 years earlier. The compass rose wasn't just decorative. It was a sacred symbol representing the navigation skills that had guided her team through hostile territory when their GPS systems failed and enemy forces closed in from all sides. Sarah endured the mockery with the same stoic silence she'd maintained during months of interrogation training. She'd learned long ago that some secrets were worth protecting, regardless of the personal cost. But as the harassment intensified, she began to question whether her commitment to discretion was worth the daily humiliation she faced at work. That the turning point came on a rainy Tuesday morning in October. Sarah was reviewing quarterly reports when her supervisor, Marcus Webb, approached her desk with a particularly cruel grin. "Sarah, we're having a costume party next week for Halloween. You should come dressed as a badass military woman." "Oh wait, that might be too much of a stretch for someone with a decorative compass tattoo." The entire office erupted in laughter, and Sarah felt something inside her crack. That evening, Sarah sat in her sparse apartment, staring at the framed photograph she kept hidden in her bedroom drawer. The image showed her in full tactical gear, standing beside a group of refugee children they'd successfully evacuated from a bombed-out hospital. Her face was barely recognizable beneath the dirt and exhaustion, but her eyes held the same quiet determination that had carried her through 12 years of covert operations. The tattoo had been her idea, a way to honor the mission without violating her oath of secrecy. The coordinates weren't random. They marked the courtyard of the Children's Hospital of Damascus, where she'd made the split-second decision to abandon the original extraction route and navigate through underground tunnels instead. That decision had saved the lives of 3 doctors, 8 nurses, and 6 children who would have died in the bombing that destroyed the buildings north. When just minutes after they escaped, Sarah had spent 18 months in Syria working under deep cover as a logistics coordinator for an international aid organization. In reality, she was part of a joint task force conducting high-risk extractions of medical personnel and civilians from active combat zones. The work was dangerous, exhausting, and absolutely classified. So classified that even her family believed she was simply doing administrative work overseas. The compass rose represented more than navigation. It symbolized the moral compass that had guided her through impossible decisions. Should they risk exposure to save one more person? Could they trust the local contact who claimed to know a safe route? When enemy forces surrounded their position, which direction offered the best chance of survival? These weren't theoretical questions. They were life and death decisions that Sarah had made dozens of times. Her specialty was tactical navigation and emergency evacuation procedures. While other team members handled communications and security, Sarah plotted routes through war-torn cities, calculated risk assessments for extraction points, and maintained detailed maps of safe houses and supply caches. She'd memorized the street layouts of Damascus, Aleppo, and Homs so thoroughly that she could navigate them blindfolded. The specific coordinates in her tattoo, 33.5138N, 36.2765E, marked the exact spot where she'd stood when she realized their original escape route had been compromised. Intelligence reports later confirmed that following the planned route would have led them directly into an ambush. Her last-minute decision to trust her instincts and choose an alternate path had been the difference between a successful extraction and a massacre. But sitting in her quiet apartment, watching rain streak down the windows, Sarah wondered if anyone would ever understand the weight of that decision. The refugees they'd saved had returned to their families. The medical personnel had continued their vital work, and the world had moved on. Meanwhile, Sarah had returned to civilian life, trading tactical gear for business suits and classified briefings for quarterly reports. The mockery from her coworkers stung not because they were wrong about her being ordinary, but because they were so completely wrong about who she really was. Every laugh, every sneered comment, every dismissive gesture felt like a betrayal of the sacrifices she'd made and the lives she'd saved. How could she explain that her decorative tattoo honored some of the most courageous people she'd ever known? The harassment reached a crescendo during the company's monthly all-hands meeting. Sarah had arrived early, hoping to avoid the usual gauntlet of snide comments, but her coworkers had apparently planned something special. As she took her seat in the conference room, she noticed several people whispering and pointing at her. Jennifer from HR stood up and addressed the room with mock seriousness. Before we begin today's agenda, I think we should all take a moment to appreciate Sarah's commitment to her artistic expression. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to Sarah. It takes real courage to get a tattoo that looks like it was drawn by a third grader with a broken compass. The laughter that followed was sharp and cruel, echoing off the conference room walls. Marcus Webb, ever the opportunist, decided to pile on. You know what, Jennifer? You're absolutely right. In fact, I think we should all get matching tattoos. Maybe some clip art of an anchor, or perhaps a butterfly, something equally meaningful and profound. The mockery continued for several more minutes, with various colleagues offering their own helpful suggestions for Sarah's next tattoo. Sarah sat frozen in her chair, her hands clenched so tightly that her knuckles had turned white. She thought about the weight of her security clearance, the oath she'd taken, and the lives that depended on her continued silence. But she also thought about the 18 months she'd spent dodging sniper fire, the nights she'd gone without sleep to coordinate evacuations, and the faces of the children she'd helped save. The meeting finally moved on to quarterly sales figures, but Sarah barely heard a word. Her mind was racing through possibilities, calculating risks and potential consequences. She'd spent years perfecting the art of maintaining her cover, but the constant humiliation was beginning to affect her mental health. She'd started having nightmares again, not about the dangerous missions, but about the daily degradation she faced at work. After the meeting, Sarah retreated to her desk and opened her laptop. Almost without thinking, she began typing a letter of resignation. The words flowed easily, professionally detached, and giving no indication of the real reasons for her departure. She could find another job, perhaps in a different city where no one knew her, and she could start fresh. But as she reached for the print button, her phone buzzed with a text message. The message was from Dr. Elena Vasquez, one of the doctors she'd helped evacuate from Damascus. Sarah, I wanted you to know that little Amira just celebrated her 4th birthday. She's healthy and happy, and she still talks about the brave woman who helped her escape. I know you can't talk about what you did, but I wanted you to know that your sacrifice mattered. The coordinates you gave me that night saved all of our lives." Sarah stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted her resignation letter. She realized that running away wouldn't solve anything. It would just be another form of surrender. The people who mocked her tattoo had no idea what real courage looked like, but that didn't diminish the value of what she'd accomplished. If anything, their ignorance only highlighted the importance of the work she'd done. But that didn't mean she had to continue enduring their cruelty in silence. Sarah had spent her entire career finding creative solutions to impossible problems, and this situation was no different. She needed a way to defend herself without compromising. Operational security, a strategy that would shut down the harassment without revealing classified information. The solution came to her during lunch, as she sat alone in the cafeteria listening to her coworkers plan their next round of jokes. She pulled out her phone and began making calls, not to her former handlers or government contacts, but to people who could help her in a different way. By the end of the day, she had a plan that would either solve her problem permanently or potentially end her career. But after months of humiliation, she was ready to take that risk. The next morning, Sarah arrived at work 30 minutes early and requested a meeting with the company's CEO, Patricia Chun. It was an unusual request. Junior accountants didn't typically have direct access to the executive suite, but Sarah had leveraged her security, clearance and military background to secure the meeting. She'd been deliberately vague about the purpose, mentioning only that it concerned workplace harassment and potential security implications. Patricia Chun was a former military officer herself, having served as a logistics coordinator in the Air Force before transitioning to the private sector. She listened intently as Sarah explained the situation, carefully omitting any classified details while making it clear that her tattoo represented legitimate military service. Sarah didn't reveal the specific nature of her work, but she provided enough context to help Patricia understand the gravity of the situation. "I've maintained my security clearance and continue to serve in a reserve capacity," Sarah explained carefully. "The harassment I'm experiencing isn't just unprofessional. It's potentially compromising my ability to fulfill my ongoing obligations to national security." It was a calculated risk, using her military background as leverage without revealing the classified nature of her service. Patricia's expression grew increasingly serious as she realized the implications. A company that employed someone with active security clearance had certain responsibilities and potential liabilities. If the harassment continued and affected Sarah's ability to maintain her clearance, it could have serious consequences for both Sarah and the company. "I need you to know that I take this extremely seriously," Patricia said finally. "Military service, regardless of the specific nature, deserves respect and protection. The behavior you've described is completely unacceptable, and I intend to address it immediately." Within hours of Sarah's meeting with Patricia Chun, the atmosphere in the office began to shift dramatically. Word spread quickly through the company's management structure that Sarah Martinez was not merely an accountant with a questionable tattoo, but a military veteran whose service record commanded respect and discretion. The details remained vague, as they needed to be, but the message was clear. The harassment would stop immediately, and there would be serious consequences for anyone who continued to participate. Marcus Webb was the first to feel the impact. He was called into Patricia's office that same afternoon and emerged 30 minutes later looking pale and shaken. The meeting had been brief but devastating. Patricia had made it clear that his behavior towards Sarah was not only unprofessional, but potentially illegal under military discrimination laws. Marcus had always prided himself on being a skilled office politician, but he'd never encountered a situation where his target had connections that reached far beyond the corporate hierarchy. Jennifer from HR found herself in an even more precarious position. As someone responsible for maintaining workplace standards and preventing discrimination, her participation in the harassment represented a serious professional failure. Patricia's review of recent incidents revealed a pattern of behavior that could expose the company to significant legal liability. Jennifer's future with the company now hung in the balance, dependent on her ability to demonstrate genuine change and make appropriate amends. The transformation was swift and comprehensive. Colleagues who had participated in the mockery suddenly found themselves struggling to make eye contact with Sarah. The whispered joke stopped abruptly, replaced by awkward silence whenever she entered a room. Some coworkers attempted to overcompensate, offering overly friendly greetings and compliments that felt forced and uncomfortable. Sarah watched these changes with mixed emotions. The harassment had stopped, which was her primary objective, but the solution felt incomplete. Her coworkers' newfound respect was based on fear rather than understanding, and she remained isolated from the social dynamics of the office. She'd won the battle, but wasn't sure she'd achieved the peace she'd been seeking. The situation took an unexpected turn when David Kim, a quiet software analyst who'd never participated in the harassment, approached Sarah's desk during lunch break. "I wanted to apologize," he said quietly. "I never joined in the jokes, but I never stood up for you either. I should have said something, and I'm sorry I didn't." David's apology was different from the others she'd received. It felt genuine rather than self-serving. "I have a brother who served in Afghanistan," he continued. "He has tattoos that mean things to him that he can't really explain to civilians. I should have recognized that yours might be similar." For the first time in months, Sarah felt a genuine connection with a coworker. David's understanding wasn't perfect, but it was authentic. He wasn't trying to curry favor or protect himself from potential consequences. He was simply offering a human acknowledgement of her experience. Over the following weeks, Sarah found herself slowly opening up to David during their lunch conversations. She couldn't share the classified details of her service, but she could discuss some of the emotional challenges of transitioning from military to civilian life. David proved to be an excellent listener, asking thoughtful questions without pushing for information she couldn't provide. Their growing friendship became a source of stability as Sarah navigated the changed dynamics of her workplace. The harassment had ended, but the office environment remained tense and artificial. Colleagues were polite but distant, treating her with the kind of careful deference usually reserved for visitors from corporate headquarters. The irony wasn't lost on Sarah. She'd spent years blending in perfectly as an undercover operative, but now she couldn't seem to find her footing in a normal office environment. Her success in stopping the harassment had inadvertently created a new kind of isolation, one that felt almost as challenging as the original problem. 3 months after her meeting with Patricia Chun, Sarah received an unexpected visitor. Dr. Elena Vasquez had come to the United States for a medical conference and had tracked down Sarah's workplace address. The reunion was emotional but necessarily brief. Elena understood the constraints of Sarah's situation and was careful not to say anything that might compromise her security. "I wanted to thank you in person," Elena said simply. "And I wanted you to know that the work you did matters every single day. The people you saved are living full lives because of your courage." Elena's visit provided Sarah with a renewed sense of purpose and perspective. The daily challenges of office politics seemed insignificant compared to the life and death decisions she'd faced in Syria. Her tattoo wasn't just a memorial to one mission. It was a reminder of her capacity to make difficult choices and face impossible odds. That evening, Sarah made a decision that would change the trajectory of her civilian career. She began researching opportunities that would allow her to use her unique skills and experience in more meaningful ways. Government contractor positions, security consulting firms, and international aid organizations all offered possibilities that seemed more aligned with her background and values. The mockery from her coworkers had been painful, but it had also forced her to confront some fundamental questions about her post-military life. She'd been so focused on maintaining her cover and protecting classified information that she'd forgotten to consider whether her current path was truly fulfilling her potential. As Sarah began planning her next career move, she realized that the harassment had inadvertently become a catalyst for positive change. The coordinates on her wrist would always remind her of the lives she'd saved, but they could also serve as a compass pointing toward a more purposeful future. The phone calls Sarah had been making during her final weeks at Henderson Associates were beginning to bear fruit. 3 months after her meeting with Patricia Chun, when the office atmosphere had settled into its new, respectful rhythm, Sarah received the call she'd been hoping for. Colonel James Harrison from Meridian Risk Solutions was ready to make her an offer that would change everything. "We've completed our security review," Colonel Harrison explained during their video conference. "Your background is exactly what we need for our expanding operations in the Middle East. When can you start?" 6 months after the harassment had first begun, Sarah found herself cleaning out her desk at Henderson Associates for the final time. The office that had once felt like a battlefield now seemed almost surreal in its transformation. Colleagues who had once mocked her tattoo now nodded respectfully as she packed her belongings, some even approaching to wish her well in her new position. Marcus Webb surprised her by requesting a private conversation before she left. The change in his demeanor was remarkable. Gone was the smirking antagonist who had orchestrated much of the harassment. In his place stood a man who seemed genuinely humbled by the experience. "I want you to know that working with you these past few months has been educational," Marcus said carefully. "I've started volunteering with a veterans organization downtown. I realized I had a lot to learn about what military service really means." Sarah appreciated his words, though. She remained cautious. Real change took time to prove itself, and Marcus would need to demonstrate his commitment through consistent actions rather than well-intentioned speeches. Still, his transformation represented hope that people could grow beyond their prejudices. When properly motivated, the most meaningful farewell came from David Kim, who had become a genuine friend during the difficult months. Their lunch conversations had evolved into evening dinners and weekend activities, creating a small but supportive social network that had helped Sarah navigate the challenging period. "I'm going to miss our discussions about everything except work," David said with a smile. "Promise me you'll stay in touch. I want to hear about all the amazing things you're going to accomplish." Sarah's last day at Henderson Associates coincided with the company's implementation of its new veteran support policies. Jennifer from HR had worked tirelessly to develop comprehensive training programs and clear guidelines that would prevent future incidents of discrimination. The policies were already being studied by other companies as examples of best practices. Patricia Chun made a point of personally seeing Sarah off, walking her to the elevator bank where this journey had effectively begun. "You know, when you first came to my office, I thought we were dealing with a straightforward harassment issue," Patricia reflected. "I had no idea we were actually being given an opportunity to transform our entire corporate culture." The elevator doors opened, and Sarah stepped inside for the last time. As the doors closed, she felt a complex mix of emotions: relief at leaving behind a place of painful memories, anticipation for the meaningful work ahead, but also a surprising sense of accomplishment. She had faced discrimination and harassment, but she had also catalyzed positive changes that would benefit other veterans for years to come. 2 weeks later, Sarah stood in the bustling offices of Meridian Risk Solutions in Washington, D.C. The contrast with Henderson Associates was immediately apparent. The walls displayed maps of conflict zones, awards from humanitarian organizations, and photographs of successful missions around the world. This was a workplace where her military background was an asset rather than liability. Her new colleagues were a diverse group of former military and intelligence professionals who understood her background without needing explanations. The casual references to deployment experiences, the shared understanding of operational security requirements, and the collective commitment to meaningful work created an environment where Sarah felt immediately at home. Colonel Harrison introduced her to the team that would be working on the Syrian medical clinic project. Dr. Amanda Torres, a former Army medic turned humanitarian coordinator, would be leading the mission. The project's goal was to establish security protocols for medical facilities serving refugee populations along the Syrian-Turkish border. We need someone who understands the regional dynamics and can develop evacuation procedures that account for the complex political situation, Dr. Torres explained. Your background makes you uniquely qualified to bridge the gap between military security concerns and humanitarian mission requirements. As Sarah reviewed the project files, she felt the familiar thrill of meaningful work returning. The medical facilities they would be protecting served some of the world's most vulnerable populations, refugees who had lost everything, but still held on to hope for the future. This was exactly the kind of work that had originally drawn her to government service. The irony wasn't lost on her that she was returning to Syria, the same region where her classified operations had taken place. But this time, her work would be conducted in full cooperation with international organizations, local authorities, and humanitarian agencies. The transparency was refreshing after years of maintaining operational security about her most significant professional accomplishments. Her first assignment was to conduct a comprehensive security assessment of existing medical facilities and develop protocols that would protect patients, staff, and medical supplies from various threats. The work required her to draw on all of her previous experience while adapting to the different requirements of humanitarian operations. The assessment trip was scheduled for the following month, giving Sarah time to prepare and coordinate with various stakeholders. As she dove into the planning process, she realized that her experience at Henderson Associates had taught her valuable lessons about communication and relationship building that would serve her well in this new role. The harassment she had endured had forced her to develop skills in navigating difficult interpersonal dynamics, advocating for herself professionally, and maintaining her dignity under pressure. These abilities would prove invaluable when working with the diverse coalition of organizations involved in humanitarian operations. As Sarah prepared for her return to the Middle East, she touched the tattoo on her wrist and smiled. The coordinates would soon be taking her back to the region they commemorated, but this time her mission would be entirely different. Instead of classified operations conducted in secret, she would be working openly to protect the same types of vulnerable populations she had helped during her military service. 3 weeks into her preparation for the Syrian assessment mission, Sarah received an unexpected visitor at her temporary apartment in Washington, D.C. Dr. Elena Vasquez had flown in from Geneva, where she was now working with the World Health Organization to coordinate medical responses in conflict zones. Reunion was emotional, but necessarily brief. Elena understood the constraints of Sarah's new position and was careful not to say anything that might compromise operational security. However, her presence served as a powerful reminder of why Sarah's work mattered. "I wanted to see you before you returned to the region," Elena explained over coffee. "And I wanted you to know that little Amira, the girl we evacuated from the children's hospital, just started medical school. She wants to become a doctor so she can help other children like herself." The news brought tears to Sarah's eyes. The coordinates on her wrist had marked the exact location where that evacuation had taken place, and knowing that one of the children they'd saved was now pursuing a career in medicine felt like a validation of every difficult decision she'd made. Elena's visit also provided Sarah with valuable insights into the current situation in the refugee camps along the Syrian-Turkish border. The medical facilities that Meridian would be securing were treating thousands of patients each month, many of whom had conditions that could have been prevented with earlier intervention. "The work you're about to do will save lives," Elena said. Simply, different from before, but just as important. As Elena prepared to leave for her flight back to Geneva, She handed Sarah a small envelope. "This is from the medical staff at the facilities you'll be protecting. They wanted you to know how much they appreciate the work you're about to do." The envelope contained a letter signed by dozens of doctors, nurses, and medical assistants who were volunteering their time to serve refugee populations. Their gratitude was deeply moving, but it also highlighted the enormous responsibility that came with Sarah's new position. The following week, Sarah departed for Turkey as part of a small advance team that would conduct the initial security assessment. The flight gave her time to reflect on how dramatically her life had changed in just a few months. She was returning to a region where she had once operated under deep cover, but now she was traveling openly as a humanitarian security consultant. The refugee camps along the Turkish border were both heartbreaking and inspiring. Thousands of families who had lost everything lived in temporary shelters, yet the communities they had created demonstrated remarkable resilience and hope for the future. Sarah's first task was to assess the existing security measures at 3 medical clinics that served the refugee population. The facilities were staffed by international volunteers who had come from around the world to provide care for some of the most vulnerable people on earth. Dr. Fatima al-Rashid, the lead physician at the largest clinic, gave Sarah a comprehensive tour of the facilities. The clinic treated everything from routine childhood illnesses to complex trauma cases, operating with limited supplies and equipment, but unlimited dedication. "We lose sleep over the security situation," Dr. al-Rashid admitted. "We know we're providing essential services, but we also know that makes us potential targets. We need to feel confident that our patients and staff are as safe as possible." Sarah's security assessment revealed both strengths and vulnerabilities in the existing arrangements. The clinics had good relationships with local security forces and had implemented basic safety protocols, but they lacked comprehensive evacuation plans and communication systems for emergency situations. Over the following 2 weeks, Sarah worked with local authorities, international aid organizations, and clinic staff to develop detailed security protocols that addressed various threat scenarios. The work required her to draw on all of her previous experience while adapting to the unique requirements of humanitarian operations. The most challenging aspect of the assignment was balancing security concerns with the clinic's mission of providing accessible healthcare to refugee populations. Any security measures that made it more difficult for patients to receive care would ultimately undermine the facility's humanitarian purpose. Sarah's solution was to create layered security protocols that could be implemented gradually based on threat levels. During normal operations, the clinics would maintain minimal visible security presence to preserve their welcoming atmosphere. But detailed evacuation plans and communication procedures would be in place to respond quickly to any emergencies. Success of her approach was evident in the positive feedback from both clinic staff and local security officials. The protocol she developed provided comprehensive protection while maintaining the facility's humanitarian character. As her initial assignment in Turkey concluded, Sarah received word that Meridian Risk Solutions wanted to expand her role to include training programs for other humanitarian organizations operating in high-risk environments. The company had been impressed by her ability to develop practical solutions that balance security concerns with humanitarian missions. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The training program opportunity appealed to Sarah because it would allow her to share her expertise with a broader range of organizations and potentially impact the safety of humanitarian workers around the world. The work would also provide her with a platform to advocate for better integration of military veterans into humanitarian careers. During her final week in Turkey, Sarah received a message from David Kim back in Washington. Henderson Associates had been contacted by several other companies seeking advice on implementing veteran-friendly workplace policies. The transformation that had begun with Sarah's harassment complaint was creating ripple effects throughout the business community. The message reminded Sarah that her impact extended far beyond her current humanitarian work. The changes she had catalyzed at Henderson Associates were continuing to benefit other veterans who might otherwise face similar discrimination and harassment. As Sarah prepared to return to Washington, D.C. to begin developing the training programs, she reflected on the interconnected nature of her various experiences. Her classified military service had prepared her for humanitarian security work, while her experience with workplace discrimination had given her insights into organizational change that would prove valuable in her training programs. The tattoo on her wrist had taken on new layers of meaning during her time in Turkey. The coordinates still marked the location of her classified evacuation mission, but they now also represented her commitment to protecting vulnerable populations through transparent humanitarian work. The compass rose continued to guide her toward meaningful service, even as the nature of that service evolved. Back in Washington, D.C., Sarah threw herself into developing the training programs for Meridian Risk Solutions. The success of her security assessment in Turkey had demonstrated her ability to bridge the gap between military expertise and humanitarian requirements, and the company wanted to capitalize on this unique skill set. The training program she designed was comprehensive and innovative, addressing the specific challenges faced by organizations operating in high-risk environments while maintaining their humanitarian missions. Sarah drew on her extensive experience with both classified operations and transparent humanitarian work to create modules that covered everything from threat assessment to emergency evacuation procedures. What made Sarah's training program particularly effective was her ability to help humanitarian organizations understand military perspectives without requiring them to adopt military structures. She taught civilian aid workers how to think tactically about security while maintaining their commitment to neutral, impartial humanitarian principles. The first pilot program was conducted for staff from 3 major international aid organizations that were planning to expand their operations into conflict zones. The 5-day intensive training covered risk assessment, security planning, emergency communications, and cultural awareness, all delivered through Sarah's unique lens of someone who understood both military and humanitarian perspectives. Feedback from participants was overwhelmingly positive. Dr. Rebecca Thompson, a medical coordinator with Doctors Without Borders, commented that Sarah's training had given her confidence to lead medical teams in environments she had previously considered too dangerous to operate in. Sarah taught us how to think about security without becoming paranoid, Dr. Thompson explained. She helped us understand that proper planning and preparation can allow us to work safely in places where people desperately need our help. The success of the pilot program led to requests from organizations around the world for similar training. Within 6 months, Sarah found herself traveling internationally to deliver workshops in Geneva, London, and Nairobi, each customized to address the specific challenges and opportunities in different regions. As her reputation grew, Sarah began receiving invitations to speak at conferences and policy forums about the intersection of military expertise and humanitarian work. These speaking engagements provided her with a platform to advocate for better integration of military veterans into civilian careers, while highlighting the value they brought to organizations focused on global service. One particularly significant speaking opportunity came when she was invited to address the annual assembly of the International Committee of the Red Cross in Geneva. Her presentation on military experience as a humanitarian asset challenged some long-held assumptions about the compatibility of military and humanitarian cultures. Military personnel and humanitarian workers often share the same fundamental commitment to serving others and protecting vulnerable populations, Sarah explained to the assembly. The question isn't whether these perspectives are compatible. It's how we can better leverage the complementary strengths they represent. Her presentation sparked significant discussion among the assembly participants, many of whom had never considered the potential benefits of hiring military veterans for humanitarian positions. Several organizations approached Sarah after her presentation to discuss how they might develop veteran recruitment programs. These conversations led Sarah to begin thinking more systematically about the barriers that prevented veterans from pursuing careers in international development and humanitarian work. She realized that while many veterans would be interested in this type of meaningful work, most were unaware of the opportunities available or unsure how to present their military experience to civilian humanitarian organizations. At the same time, Sarah continued her consulting work with companies seeking to improve their support for military veterans. Her experience at Henderson Associates had given her unique insights into the dynamics of workplace discrimination and the organizational changes needed to create truly inclusive environments. One of her most successful consulting projects involved working with a major consulting firm that wanted to recruit more military veterans, but was struggling to integrate them effectively into their corporate culture. Sarah helped them develop mentorship programs, communication training, and career development pathways specifically designed for veteran employees. The project's success was evident not just in improved retention rates for veteran employees, but also in the positive impact those veterans had on the company's overall performance. The firm's managing partner noted that veteran employees consistently demonstrated leadership qualities, problem-solving abilities, and client service skills that enhanced the company's reputation and effectiveness. As Sarah's first year with Meridian Risk Solutions drew to a close, she began to envision an even broader approach to addressing veteran transition challenges. Her experiences with training programs, consulting work, and humanitarian operations had given her a comprehensive understanding of both the obstacles veterans faced and the opportunities available to them. The idea that had been germinating in her mind was ambitious. What if there was an organization dedicated specifically to helping military veterans transition to careers in international development and humanitarian work? Such an organization could address the information gap that prevented veterans from learning about these opportunities, while also helping humanitarian organizations understand the value of military experience. Sarah began discussing this concept with colleagues at Meridian, mentors from her military service, and contacts in the humanitarian community. The response was uniformly enthusiastic, with many people noting that they had been thinking about similar issues, but hadn't seen a comprehensive approach to addressing them. Dr. Elena Vasquez, who had maintained contact with Sarah throughout her transition, was particularly supportive of the concept. "You've proven that military experience can be incredibly valuable in humanitarian work," Elena told Sarah during one of their encrypted conversations. "But you shouldn't be the only one making this transition. There are thousands of veterans who could contribute to humanitarian efforts if they just knew how to get started." As Sarah began developing a more detailed proposal for what would eventually become Compass Rose International, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. The harassment she had experienced at Henderson Associates now seemed like a distant memory, but the lessons she had learned from that experience continued to inform her work. The transformation she had witnessed at Henderson Associates demonstrated that organizational change was possible when leadership was committed and employees were properly educated. Sarah was convinced that similar principles could be applied to the challenge of integrating veterans into humanitarian careers. The coordinates on her wrist had guided her through classified operations, workplace discrimination, and meaningful humanitarian work. Now they were pointing toward an even greater challenge: creating systematic solutions that would help other veterans find their own paths to purposeful post-military careers. The Compass Rose was leading her toward the most ambitious project of her life. All post-military careers. She envisioned eventually developing programs that would train military veterans to work in international development and humanitarian assistance, creating pathways for skilled professionals to contribute to global peace and security efforts. Sarah's consulting work with civilian companies also continued to evolve. She was invited to speak at conferences about veteran integration and workplace inclusion, sharing her story in carefully crafted presentations that highlighted the challenges without revealing classified information. Her talks were well received, and she began to build a reputation as an expert in veteran employment issues. The speaking engagements provided Sarah with a platform to advocate for policy changes that would better support military veterans in their transition to civilian careers. She testified before congressional committees about the need for improved education programs, worked with professional associations to develop veteran-friendly hiring practices, and collaborated with universities to create academic programs tailored to veterans' needs and interests. Through all of these activities, Sarah maintained her commitment to operational security while finding ways to use her experience to benefit others. The balance was delicate but achievable, requiring careful consideration of what information could be shared and what needed to remain classified. The book project was consuming Sarah's evenings and weekends, but it was also providing her with an opportunity to synthesize everything she had learned about veteran transition, organizational change, and finding purpose in civilian careers. Each chapter drew on specific experiences from her journey, while interviews with other veterans added depth and universality to the narrative. One of the most powerful chapters focused on the transformation that had occurred at Henderson Associates, using the company's evolution as a case study in how organizations could change their cultures to become more inclusive and supportive of veterans. Sarah had interviewed dozens of employees, from Patricia Chun to Marcus Webb to David Kim, documenting the before and after perspectives that made the transformation so compelling. The chapter on Henderson and Associates also featured input from Dr. Rebecca Martinez, the university researcher who had studied the company's cultural change. Her academic analysis provided theoretical framework for understanding how individual experiences of discrimination could catalyze broader organizational transformations when leadership was committed to meaningful change. Sarah's experience demonstrates that workplace discrimination isn't just harmful to individuals, it represents a massive waste of human potential. Dr. Martinez had explained during one of their interviews, organizations that learn to recognize and develop the talents of all their employees, including veterans with unique backgrounds, gain significant competitive advantages. As the manuscript neared completion, Sarah received word that Compass Rose International had been selected to receive the Presidential Award for Excellence in Veteran Services. The award recognized organizations that had made outstanding contributions to supporting military veterans transition to civilian careers. The White House ceremony was scheduled for Veterans Day, and Sarah was invited to bring several program participants who exemplified the organization's impact. She chose to invite Marcus Webb, whose transformation from workplace antagonist to veteran advocate represented the possibility of personal and professional redemption. She also invited Maria Santos, the former Army intelligence analyst who had become a senior program manager with the International Committee of the Red Cross after participating in Compass Rose's fellowship program. Maria's success story demonstrated the potential for veterans to contribute meaningfully to international humanitarian efforts. The third invitee was David Kim, whose friendship and support during Sarah's darkest moments at Henderson Associates had been crucial to her eventual success. David's presence would represent the importance of allies and advocates in creating positive change. White House ceremony was both professionally gratifying and personally emotional for Sarah. Standing in the East Room, surrounded by other award recipients and senior government officials, she reflected on the journey that had brought her from a small accounting firm to the highest levels of national recognition. President Johnson's remarks during the ceremony emphasized the critical importance of supporting veterans' transition to civilian careers and the innovative approaches that organizations like Compass Rose International were developing to address these challenges. Sarah Martinez and her team at Compass Rose International represent the best of American innovation and service, the president said during his address. They've transformed personal adversity into organizational excellence, creating opportunities for thousands of veterans to continue serving their country in new ways. After the ceremony, Sarah had the opportunity for a brief private conversation with the president, during which she advocated for increased federal support for veteran transition programs and international development initiatives that could benefit from military expertise. The presidential award brought national media attention to Compass Rose International and significantly increased interest in the organization's programs. Within weeks of the ceremony, Sarah was fielding inquiries from veteran organizations, international development agencies, and government officials who wanted to develop similar initiatives. The increased visibility also accelerated progress on Sarah's book, which had attracted interest from major publishers who recognized the potential market for a comprehensive guide to veteran transition written by someone with both personal experience and organizational expertise. The final chapter of the book focused on the broader implications of veteran integration for national security and global stability. Sarah argued that supporting veterans' transition to meaningful civilian careers wasn't just a moral obligation. It was a strategic imperative that could enhance America's capacity to address complex global challenges. Veterans represent a bridge between military and civilian capabilities, Sarah wrote in the book's conclusion. Their successful integration into civilian careers creates a multiplier effect that benefits not just individual veterans and their families, but entire communities and industries that gain access to their unique skills and perspectives. As the 4th anniversary of her departure from Henderson Associates approached, Sarah was invited to return to the company one final time. Henderson Associates was dedicating a new conference room in her honor, recognizing her role in transforming the company's culture and establishing its reputation as a leader in veteran employment practices. The dedication ceremony was attended by Patricia Chun, who had been promoted to chairman of the board, and Jennifer from HR, who had become the company's chief diversity officer. Marcus Webb was there as well, representing Compass Rose International in his ongoing role as Director of Corporate Partnerships. The conference room itself had been transformed into a space that celebrated military service and veteran contributions. The walls displayed quotes from military leaders, maps of humanitarian operations around the world, and photographs of Henderson Associates employees who were military veterans. But the centerpiece of the room was a compass rose inlaid into the conference table, its coordinates pointing toward different cities around the world where the company's veteran employees had served. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone present. The same compass rose that had once been mocked on Sarah's wrist was now celebrated as a symbol of service, sacrifice, and professional excellence. During the dedication ceremony, Sarah was asked to speak about the journey that had brought them all to this moment. Her remarks were brief but powerful, emphasizing the importance of believing in people's capacity for growth and change while never forgetting the lessons learned from difficult experiences. This room represents more than just a physical space, Sarah told the assembled group. It represents our collective commitment to creating workplaces where everyone's service is honored, where different backgrounds are seen as assets rather than liabilities, and where we have the courage to confront our own biases and grow beyond them. As the ceremony concluded and Sarah prepared to leave Henderson Associates for what would likely be the final time, she touched the tattoo on her wrist one more time. The coordinates still marked the exact location where she had saved lives during her classified operations, but they now also represented the starting point for a journey that had transformed not just her own life, but the lives of thousands of veterans around the world. The compass rose had guided her through hostile territory, workplace discrimination, meaningful humanitarian work, and successful entrepreneurship. As she walked toward the elevator, Sarah knew that the compass was still pointing forward, toward new challenges and opportunities to serve that she couldn't yet imagine. The harassment that had begun in this very building 4 years earlier had been painful and humiliating, but it had also been the catalyst for changes that extended far beyond her personal experience. Henderson Associates had become a model for veteran-inclusive employment practices. Compass Rose International was helping thousands of veterans find meaningful careers, and the broader conversation about veteran integration had shifted toward recognizing military service as a valuable asset rather than a potential liability. As the elevator doors closed behind her, Sarah smiled at the irony of the moment. The same building where her tattoo had once been a source of mockery was now home to a conference room featuring a compass rose as its centerpiece. The transformation was complete, but Sarah knew it was also just the beginning of an even larger journey that would continue for the rest of her career. The proposal Sarah had been developing for her veteran transition organization was finally ready. After months of research, planning, and consultation with experts across the military and humanitarian sectors, she had created a comprehensive blueprint for what would become Compass Rose International. The timing couldn't have been better. Sarah's success with Meridian Risk Solutions had given her credibility in both military and civilian circles, while her consulting work had demonstrated the widespread need for better veteran integration programs. The proposal she submitted to potential funders was both ambitious and achievable, outlining a systematic approach to connecting military veterans with meaningful careers in international development. The first major breakthrough came when the Ford Foundation agreed to provide seed funding for a pilot program. The Foundation's program officer, Dr. Michael Chang, had been impressed by Sarah's comprehensive understanding of both veteran transition challenges and international development needs. What makes your proposal unique is that you're not just identifying problems, you're providing practical solutions that benefit both veterans and the organizations that hire them, Dr. Chang explained during their funding meeting. This is exactly the kind of innovative approach we want to support. With initial funding secured, Sarah began the complex process of establishing Compass Rose International as a nonprofit organization. The work required her to navigate federal regulations, develop operational procedures, and build partnerships with organizations across multiple sectors. One of her first hires was Marcus Webb, whose transformation from workplace antagonist to veteran advocate had continued to evolve in remarkable ways. Marcus had spent the past year volunteering with veteran organizations and had developed genuine expertise in employment issues affecting former military personnel. "I know this might seem unexpected," Marcus said during their interview meeting, "but I want to dedicate my career to helping veterans succeed in civilian life. I've learned more about the challenges you face than I ever knew existed, and I want to use my business experience to make a difference." Sarah was initially hesitant about hiring Marcus, given their complicated history. However, his commitment to veteran issues appeared genuine, and his corporate experience would be valuable in building relationships with potential employer partners. After extensive consultation with mentors and colleagues, Sarah decided to offer Marcus a position as Director of Corporate Partnerships. The decision to hire Marcus generated significant discussion within the veteran community, with some questioning whether someone who had perpetrated harassment against a veteran should be entrusted with helping other veterans. Sarah addressed these concerns directly in a blog post that explained her reasoning. "People can change," Sarah wrote. "Marcus Webb went from being someone who mocked my military service to someone who has dedicated hundreds of hours to understanding and supporting veteran issues. If we don't believe in the possibility of transformation, how can we ask civilian organizations to change their own approaches to hiring veterans?" The blog post went viral within veteran social media networks, sparking broader conversations about forgiveness, redemption, and the importance of building bridges between military and civilian communities. Many veterans shared their own stories of overcoming discrimination and finding allies in unexpected places. Meanwhile, Sarah continued working with Meridian Risk Solutions while building Compass Rose International during evenings and weekends. The dual responsibilities were exhausting but energizing, as each role informed and strengthened the other. Her work with Meridian had expanded to include a major project in Afghanistan, where she was helping to develop security protocols for girls' schools in rural areas. The assignment was particularly meaningful because education represented hope for the future in a country that had experienced decades of conflict. The Afghan project required Sarah to spend several months in Kabul, working with local educators, international development organizations, and security forces to create safe learning environments for girls who had been denied educational opportunities for years. The challenge was immense. The schools needed to be secure enough to protect students and teachers from various threats, but they also needed to be welcoming and accessible to families who might be hesitant to send their daughters to school. Sarah's solution involved creating community-based security networks that relied on local support rather than external protection. The best security for these schools comes from the communities themselves, Sarah explained during a meeting with provincial education officials. When families feel ownership of the schools and see the benefits education brings to their daughters, they become the most effective protectors of these institutions. The approach proved successful, with several pilot schools reporting increased enrollment and no significant security incidents. The model Sarah developed was eventually adopted by other organizations working on education projects in Afghanistan and other conflict-affected regions. During her time in Afghanistan, Sarah received a message from Dr. Elena Vasquez that would change her perspective on her own work. Elena had been contacted by Amira, the young girl they had evacuated from Damascus years earlier, who was now studying medicine at university and wanted to volunteer with medical organizations serving refugee populations. She says she wants to help other children the way she was helped, Elena wrote. She doesn't know the details of what you did, but she knows that someone risked their life to save hers. Now she wants to pass that gift forward. The message reminded Sarah that the impact of her work extended far beyond the immediate beneficiaries. The lives she had saved during her classified operations were creating ripple effects that would continue for generations. Amira's decision to pursue medicine was directly connected to the evacuation mission, marked by the coordinates on Sarah's wrist. As Sarah prepared to return to Washington, D.C. to launch Compass Rose International officially, she reflected on the interconnected nature of all her experiences. Her classified military service had prepared her for humanitarian security work. Her experience with workplace discrimination had taught her about organizational change, and her success with Meridian had given her the credibility needed to establish her own organization. The launch event for Compass Rose International was scheduled for the following month, and Sarah had invited several hundred people representing military organizations, international development agencies, and veteran advocacy groups. The event would mark the culmination of her transition from harassment victim to social entrepreneur. But Sarah knew it was also just the beginning of the most important work of her career. Sarah's presentation was titled Beyond the Surface, Understanding the Stories We Can't See. She had chosen the title carefully, knowing that it would resonate with her audience while maintaining the security boundaries that governed her public speaking. As she looked out at the familiar faces in the audience, Sarah felt a complex mix of emotions. Marcus Webb sat in the front row, taking careful notes and nodding thoughtfully at her key points. Jennifer from HR was there as well, along with David Kim and many other colleagues who had witnessed her transformation from harassment victim to respected professional. Everyone has a story, Sarah began, her voice steady and confident. Some of those stories are easy to share: our educational background, our career achievements, our hobbies and interests. But others are more complex, involving experiences that can't be fully explained or accomplishments that can't be publicly recognized. She clicked to her first slide, which showed a simple image of various tattoos, each one representing a different type of personal significance. When we see symbols on someone's skin, we often make assumptions about their meaning. But those assumptions are frequently wrong, and sometimes they can be hurtful to people who are carrying experiences we can't begin to understand. Sarah's presentation walked through the psychology of workplace discrimination, the unique challenges faced by military veterans, and the importance of creating environments where people could be respected for their contributions without having to reveal their most personal experiences. She shared statistics about veteran unemployment, data on workplace harassment, and examples of successful inclusion programs. The most powerful part of her presentation came when she discussed the concept of invisible service, the idea that many people in civilian workplaces had backgrounds involving classified work, sensitive assignments, or confidential responsibilities that couldn't be discussed openly. These individuals deserved respect and support, even when their most significant accomplishments couldn't be acknowledged. The person sitting next to you might have saved lives, prevented disasters, or solved critical problems in ways that will never be publicly recognized, Sarah explained. Their quiet competence and professional integrity might be the result of experiences that shaped them in ways you can't imagine. The question is, how do we create workplaces that honor that service without requiring people to compromise their professional obligations? During the question and answer session that followed her presentation, Sarah was approached by several employees who had previously been unaware of the full scope of what had happened. They asked thoughtful questions about how to better support colleagues with military backgrounds, how to recognize signs of discrimination, and how to create more inclusive workplace cultures. One particularly moving moment came when a young accountant named Lisa approached Sarah after the presentation. "I wanted to thank you," Lisa said quietly. "I'm a National Guard reservist, and I've been afraid to talk about my military service because I didn't want to be treated differently. Your presentation helped me realize that my experience is something to be proud of, not something to hide." Sarah's conversation with Lisa revealed that the changes at Henderson Associates had created a ripple effect that extended far beyond her own experience. Other employees with military backgrounds felt more comfortable acknowledging their service, and the company had become known as a veteran-friendly employer that actively recruited and supported former military personnel. The transformation was evident in the company's hiring practices, which now included specific outreach to veteran organizations and partnerships with military transition programs. Henderson Associates had also become a sponsor of local veterans events and had established a scholarship program for military spouses pursuing business degrees. After the presentation, Sarah had lunch with Patricia Chun and several other company executives. They discussed the ongoing evolution of the company's culture and the lessons they had learned from implementing their inclusion initiatives. "Your experience taught us that discrimination often happens when people don't understand each other's backgrounds," Patricia explained. "We've found that education and awareness are the most effective tools for preventing these problems, but it requires constant attention and commitment from leadership." The conversation also touched on the broader implications of Sarah's story for other organizations. Patricia had been contacted by dozens of companies seeking advice on how to better support employees with military backgrounds, and she had developed a consulting practice focused on veteran integration and workplace inclusion. Sarah's return to Henderson Associates also provided an opportunity to reconnect with former colleagues who had been part of her original experience. Marcus Webb requested a private meeting, during which he shared his own journey of personal and professional growth. "I've been working with veteran organizations for the past 2 years," Marcus explained. "I wanted to understand what I had been so ignorant about, and I've learned more than I ever expected. I know I can't undo what happened, but I hope I can prevent it from happening to others." Marcus had become a volunteer mentor for veterans, transitioning to civilian careers, using his business experience and professional network to help former military personnel find meaningful employment. His transformation from antagonist to advocate was one of the most unexpected outcomes of Sarah's experience. The meeting with Marcus was emotionally complex for Sarah. She appreciated his efforts to make amends and his commitment to helping other veterans, but she also recognized that some wounds took time to heal completely. Trust, once broken, required consistent demonstration of change over extended periods. The launch event for Compass Rose International took place on a crisp autumn evening at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. Sarah had chosen the venue specifically because it represented American values and international engagement, the same principles that would guide her organization's mission. As guests arrived for the reception, Sarah felt a complex mix of emotions. The journey from the harassment at Henderson Associates to this moment had taken 3 years, but it felt both like a lifetime and an instant. The coordinates on her wrist seemed to pulse with significance as she greeted representatives from organizations that would become Compass Rose's first partners. Dr. Elena Vasquez had flown in from Geneva to attend the launch, bringing with her a special guest, Amira, the young woman they had evacuated from Damascus, who was now in her 2nd year of medical school. Amira had requested the meeting, wanting to thank Sarah for her role in making her education possible. "I don't know exactly what you did," Amira said quietly during their private conversation before the event. "But Dr. Vasquez told me that you helped save my life when I was a child. Now I want to use my life to help others the way you helped me." The conversation with Amira was deeply moving for Sarah, representing the full circle from her classified operations to her current humanitarian work. The young woman's determination to become a doctor and serve refugee populations demonstrated the lasting impact of decisions made in moments of crisis. Patricia Chun had also made the trip from Henderson Associates, bringing with her several colleagues who had been part of the company's transformation. The presence of her former employer's leadership team represented both validation of the changes she had catalyzed and acknowledgement of the broader impact her experience had created. Marcus Webb's presence at the launch event generated some curiosity among attendees who knew about his past relationship with Sarah. However, his role as Director of Corporate Partnerships for Compass Rose International demonstrated the organization's commitment to believing in people's capacity for growth and change. 3 years ago, I was part of the problem, Marcus addressed the audience during the event's program. "I let ignorance and prejudice guide my behavior, and I caused real harm to someone who deserved respect and support. I can't undo that damage, but I can dedicate my career to ensuring that other veterans don't face similar discrimination." Marcus's remarks were well received by the audience, many of whom were veterans themselves or worked with veteran populations. His transformation from antagonist to advocate represented hope that broader cultural change was possible. The keynote address was delivered by General Patricia Morrison, retired, former commander of U.S. Central Command, who spoke about the importance of supporting veterans' transition to civilian careers. Her presence lent significant credibility to Compass Rose International's mission and helped establish the organization's reputation within military circles. Sarah Martinez represents the best of what military service can produce, General Morrison told the audience. Her ability to transform personal adversity into organizational excellence demonstrates the leadership qualities that make veterans valuable assets in any field. During the formal program, Sarah announced Compass Rose International's first major initiative, a fellowship program that would place 50 military veterans in 1-year assignments with international development organizations. The program had already received commitments from major humanitarian agencies and would begin operations. Within 6 months, the fellowship program was designed to address both sides of the veteran employment equation, providing veterans with meaningful work experience while demonstrating their value to potential employers. Fellows would receive extensive training and mentoring, while contributing their skills to organizations working on global challenges. Sarah also announced the organization's partnership with several universities to develop academic programs specifically designed for veterans pursuing international development careers. These programs would provide formal education opportunities while addressing the unique challenges faced by students with military backgrounds. The launch event concluded with a reception that provided networking opportunities for veterans, employers, and policymakers. Sarah spent the evening moving between conversations, connecting people who shared common interests and building the relationships that would support Compass Rose International's future growth. One of the most significant conversations of the evening was with Dr. James Patterson, Director of Human Resources for the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. Dr. Patterson expressed strong interest in partnering with Compass Rose International to recruit veterans for UNHCR positions around the world. We've been struggling to find qualified candidates for some of our most challenging positions, Dr. Patterson explained. Veterans have exactly the combination of skills, experience, and dedication that we need, but we haven't known how to reach them effectively. The conversation with Dr. Patterson led to an immediate partnership opportunity that would place Compass Rose International Fellows in UNHCR operations in Jordan, Kenya, and Bangladesh. The partnership represented exactly the kind of meaningful work opportunity that Sarah had envisioned when developing the organization. As the evening concluded and guests began to depart, Sarah found herself standing alone in the Kennedy Center's lobby, reflecting on the journey that had brought her to this moment. The harassment she had experienced at Henderson Associates now seemed like a catalyst rather than an obstacle, forcing her to confront fundamental questions about purpose and meaning that had ultimately led to this moment. The tattoo on her wrist caught the light from the lobby's chandeliers, and Sarah touched it gently. The coordinates still marked the location where she had saved lives during her classified operations, but they now also represented the starting point for an organization that would help thousands of veterans find meaningful post-military careers. The Compass Rose had guided her through hostile territory, workplace discrimination, and humanitarian operations. Now it was pointing toward the most ambitious phase of her journey, building an organization that would create systematic solutions to veteran transition challenges while contributing to global humanitarian efforts. As Sarah prepared to leave the Kennedy Center, she received a text message from David Kim, her former colleague at Henderson Associates, who had become a close friend. "Watch the live stream of your event," he wrote. "You've transformed something horrible into something beautiful. The world is better because of what you've built." The message from David Kim marked the beginning of a new phase in Sarah's life. 6 months after the successful launch of Compass Rose International, the organization was exceeding all expectations. The first cohort of fellowship program participants had been placed with international organizations around the world, and their success stories were already generating requests for additional programs. Sarah's morning routine now began with video calls to fellows stationed in refugee camps in Jordan, disaster response centers in the Philippines, and peacekeeping missions in Mali. Each conversation reinforced her belief in the tremendous value that military veterans brought to humanitarian work, while also highlighting the ongoing challenges they faced in adapting to civilian organizational cultures. Marcus Webb had proven to be an invaluable addition to the Compass Rose team. His corporate connections had opened doors that might have remained closed to a purely military-focused organization, and his personal transformation story resonated powerfully with business leaders who were initially skeptical about hiring veterans. During a quarterly board meeting, Marcus presented data showing that companies partnering with Compass Rose International had seen measurable improvements in leadership development, crisis management capabilities, and employee retention rates. The correlation between veteran hiring and organizational performance was becoming impossible to ignore. "The numbers tell a clear story," Marcus explained to the board. "Organizations that hire our fellows don't just gain individual employees. They gain access to a culture of excellence, accountability, and mission focus that transforms their entire operation." The success of the fellowship program had attracted attention from major foundations, government agencies, and international organizations seeking to expand their veteran recruitment efforts. The MacArthur Foundation had approved a substantial grant to scale the program internationally, while the Department of State had requested Compass Rose's assistance in developing veteran placement programs for diplomatic missions worldwide. But perhaps the most meaningful recognition came from an unexpected source. Dr. Elena Vasquez contacted Sarah with news that the World Health Organization was creating a new position specifically designed for military veterans with humanitarian experience. The position would involve coordinating medical responses in conflict zones, drawing directly on the skills that veterans like Sarah had developed during their military service. "They're calling it the Martinez model," Elena explained during their video call. "Your work has convinced them that military experience is not just compatible with humanitarian work, it's essential for operating effectively in the world's most dangerous environments." The WHO position represented a significant shift in thinking within the international humanitarian community. For decades, many organizations had maintained strict separation between military and civilian operations, viewing them as fundamentally incompatible approaches to addressing global challenges. Sarah's success in bridging these worlds had demonstrated that the skills developed through military service, leadership under pressure, cross-cultural communication, tactical planning, and ethical decision-making were precisely the capabilities needed for effective humanitarian work in complex emergencies. The recognition from WHO led to similar initiatives at other major international organizations. The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees created a veteran recruitment track for emergency response positions, while the World Food Program developed specialized training programs that helped veterans transition their logistics experience to humanitarian supply chain management. As Compass Rose International's influence grew, Sarah found herself invited to speak at increasingly prestigious forums. Her keynote address at the Munich Security Conference drew an audience of world leaders, military officials, and humanitarian executives who were grappling with the complex challenges of maintaining global stability. "The threats we face today, from climate change to pandemics to forced migration, require responses that transcend traditional boundaries between military and civilian capabilities," Sarah told the Munich audience. Veterans represent a bridge between these worlds, bringing military training and humanitarian values together in service of global security. The Munich speech was broadcast internationally and generated significant media coverage, establishing Sarah as a leading voice in discussions about post-conflict reconstruction, humanitarian innovation, and veteran integration. The attention was sometimes overwhelming, but Sarah recognized the platform it provided for advocating on behalf of veterans worldwide. One of the most personally meaningful developments came when Sarah received a letter from Henderson Associates, announcing that the company was establishing an annual scholarship in her name for veterans pursuing degrees in international relations or humanitarian studies. The scholarship would support military veterans who wanted to transition to careers in global service, directly addressing the educational barriers that often prevented such career changes. Patricia Chun delivered the news personally during a visit to Compass Rose International's offices. "Your experience taught us that supporting veterans isn't just about avoiding discrimination. It's about recognizing and developing the tremendous potential they represent," Patricia explained. We want to ensure that other veterans have better opportunities than you initially had with us. The scholarship announcement was particularly significant because it represented Henderson Associates' evolution from a company that had tolerated discrimination to one that was actively promoting veteran success. The transformation demonstrated that organizational change was not only possible, but could become a source of competitive advantage and moral leadership. As the second year of Compass Rose International's operations began, Sarah was approached by publishers interested in having her write a book about veteran transition and organizational transformation. The book would provide her with an opportunity to share the lessons she had learned while reaching an even broader audience of veterans, employers, and policymakers. The writing process proved to be both challenging and therapeutic, forcing Sarah to reflect deeply on her journey from harassment victim to social entrepreneur. She was careful to maintain operational security regarding her classified military service while sharing the insights that could help other veterans navigate similar challenges. The book's working title was Finding True North, A Veteran's Guide to Purpose-Driven Civilian Careers, reflecting both the navigational metaphor of her tattoo and the broader theme of discovering direction and meaning in post-military life. The manuscript drew on interviews with dozens of veterans who had successfully transitioned to civilian careers in various fields, providing practical advice while honoring the diversity of veteran experiences. As Sarah worked on the book during evenings and weekends, she continued to expand Compass Rose International's programs and partnerships. The organization was now operating in 15 countries and had placed over 300 veterans in meaningful civilian positions. The success stories continued to accumulate, each one representing a life transformed and a mission accomplished. The official launch of Compass Rose International took place 5 years after Sarah's departure from Henderson Associates, in a ceremony that brought together representatives from military organizations, international development agencies, and veteran advocacy groups. The event was held at the United Nations headquarters in New York, symbolizing the organization's commitment to global humanitarian work. Sarah's opening address to the assembled audience was both personal and professional, weaving together her own story of transition with the broader vision for supporting other veterans. She spoke about the challenges of translating military experience into civilian terms, the importance of finding purpose and meaning in post-military careers, and the unique contributions that veterans could make to international development work. Every veteran carries invisible experiences that have shaped their character and capabilities, Sarah explained to the audience. Some of these experiences can be shared openly, while others must remain private. But all of them represent valuable skills and perspectives that can benefit our global community. The launch event featured presentations from several veterans who had successfully transitioned to careers in international development, as well as representatives from organizations that had benefited from hiring military personnel. The diversity of backgrounds and experiences represented at the event demonstrated the broad potential for veteran contributions to humanitarian work. One of the most powerful moments of the launch came when Dr. Elena Vasquez introduced Sarah to the audience. Dr. Vasquez spoke about the importance of recognizing the connections between military operations and humanitarian outcomes, emphasizing that many of the world's most vulnerable people had been helped by military personnel whose service couldn't be publicly acknowledged. Sarah's story represents thousands of similar stories that will never be told, Dr. Vasquez explained. But through Compass Rose International, we can ensure that the skills and dedication demonstrated in those untold stories continue to benefit people around the world. The launch event also featured the announcement of several major partnerships that would support Compass Rose International's programs. The United Nations had agreed to provide internship opportunities for program participants, while several major foundations had committed funding for the organization's operations and expansion. Sarah's work with Compass Rose International quickly gained recognition within both military and civilian communities. Military newspapers featured stories about the organization's programs, while international development publications highlighted the innovative approach to veteran integration. The organization's first major success came when one of its program participants, a former Special Forces medic named Robert Chun, was hired as a senior emergency response coordinator by the World Health Organization. Robert's military experience had prepared him perfectly for the role, which required him to coordinate medical responses to humanitarian crises in conflict zones. Robert's success story became a model for the organization's approach to veteran placement. His military background had given him the skills needed to work effectively in dangerous environments, while the training he received through Compass Rose International had helped him adapt those skills to civilian humanitarian work. The organization's programs continued to evolve based on feedback from participants and partner organizations. Sarah and her team developed specialized tracks for different types of military backgrounds, recognizing that veterans with intelligence experience needed different support than those with combat or logistics backgrounds. One of the most innovative programs developed by Compass Rose International was a reverse mentoring initiative that paired veterans with experienced humanitarian workers. The program recognized that successful integration required veterans to learn about civilian organizational cultures while also sharing their own expertise and perspectives. The reverse mentoring program was particularly successful because it created mutual learning opportunities that benefited both veterans and their civilian partners. Veterans learned about the complexities of humanitarian work, while civilian professionals gained insights into military approaches to problem-solving and crisis management. Sarah's personal involvement in the organization's programs remained high, despite her expanding responsibilities as director. She continued to mentor individual veterans, review program applications, and meet with partner organizations to develop new opportunities. The most rewarding aspect of Sarah's work with Compass Rose International was the opportunity to see other veterans find the same sense of purpose and meaning that she had discovered in her own transition. The organization's participants consistently reported that their new careers provided them with the fulfillment they had been seeking since leaving military service. 5 years after its launch, Compass Rose International had placed over 500 veterans in positions with international development organizations, humanitarian agencies, and peacekeeping missions. The organization had also established partnerships with universities to develop academic programs specifically designed for veterans pursuing international development careers. Sarah's story had become a powerful example of how personal challenges could be transformed into opportunities for positive change. The harassment she had experienced at Henderson and Associates had forced her to confront fundamental questions about her identity and purpose, ultimately leading her to create an organization that helped hundreds of other veterans navigate similar challenges. The tattoo on Sarah's wrist remained a source of personal meaning and professional inspiration. The coordinates still marked the specific location where she had saved lives during her classified operations, but the Compass Rose had become a symbol of the direction she had found in her post-military life. As Sarah reflected on her journey from harassment victim to respected professional and successful entrepreneur, she recognized that every difficult experience had contributed to her ultimate success. The discrimination she had faced had taught her about the importance of workplace inclusion, while her struggles with civilian transition had given her the insights needed to help other veterans. The story of Sarah's tattoo had evolved from a symbol of personal pain to a representation of professional purpose. The mockery she had endured had ultimately led to meaningful work that honored both her military service and her civilian achievements. Today, Sarah continues to lead Compass Rose International while maintaining her work with Meridian Risk Solutions. She travels regularly to visit program participants, meet with partner organizations, and speak at conferences about veteran transition issues. Her story serves as an inspiration to other veterans who are struggling to find their place in civilian life, demonstrating that with persistence and creativity, it's possible to build a career that honors both military service and civilian values. The coordinates on her wrist still mark the place where she once saved lives in a classified operation, but they now also represent the starting point for a journey that has helped hundreds of other veterans find their own paths to meaningful civilian careers. The compass rose continues to guide her forward, pointing toward new opportunities to serve and make a difference in the world. Asterisk. The publication of Sarah's book, Finding True North, A Veteran's Guide to Purpose-Driven Civilian Careers, marked a new milestone in her journey from harassment victim to internationally recognized advocate. The book became a bestseller within veteran communities and was adopted as required reading at military transition centers across the country. 6 months after the book's release, Sarah found herself standing before a packed auditorium at the Pentagon, delivering the keynote address at the Department of Defense's annual Transition Summit. The invitation represented the full circle of her journey, from classified operations to civilian discrimination to national recognition as a leading expert on veteran career transitions. The audience of over 1,000 service members represented all branches of the military and included personnel with diverse backgrounds and career goals. Many were facing the same uncertainties and challenges that Sarah had experienced during her own transition, struggling to understand how their military skills would translate to civilian success. Sarah's presentation was titled, The Compass Within, Finding Direction in Your Post-Military Journey. She had chosen the title to reflect both the symbolism of her tattoo and the broader message she wanted to convey about the importance of internal guidance and personal purpose in career transitions. Every one of you has a compass within you, Sarah began, her voice carrying the confidence and authority that came from years of experience. That compass has been calibrated by your military service, refined by your experiences, and strengthened by your commitment to something greater than yourself. The question isn't whether you have what it takes to succeed in civilian life. The question is whether you'll trust that compass to guide you toward meaningful work. Sarah's presentation drew on stories from her own transition and from the thousands of veterans she had helped through Compass Rose International. She shared examples of former military personnel who had found success in unexpected fields, from international development to corporate leadership to social entrepreneurship. The most powerful part of her presentation came when she discussed the concept of invisible service, the idea that many veterans carried experiences and accomplishments that couldn't be fully shared, but that represented valuable skills and perspectives. She encouraged the audience to find ways to honor their service while building bridges to civilian communities. Your military service has given you skills that civilian employers desperately need, Sarah continued. Leadership under pressure, the ability to work with diverse teams, adaptability in complex situations, and a commitment to mission accomplishment. The challenge is learning how to communicate these skills in ways that civilian employers can understand and appreciate. During the question and answer session that followed her presentation, Sarah was approached by dozens of service members who wanted to learn more about career opportunities in international development, humanitarian work, and veteran advocacy. Their enthusiasm and eagerness to make a difference reminded her of her own feelings during the early days of her transition. One particularly moving conversation was with Sergeant Maria Rodriguez, a combat medic who was struggling to find civilian career options that would provide the same sense of purpose she had experienced in the military. Sarah's advice to Maria was both practical and inspirational, encouraging her to consider opportunities with medical relief organizations that operated in conflict zones. Your experience treating wounded soldiers under fire has prepared you for medical work in the most challenging environments on Earth, Sarah told Maria. There are organizations around the world that need exactly your combination of medical skills and comfort with dangerous situations. Sarah's conversation with Maria led to a long-term mentoring relationship that exemplified the personal connections she maintained with individual veterans, even as her professional responsibilities continued to expand. 6 months after their initial meeting, Maria was hired as an emergency medical coordinator with Doctors Without Borders, beginning a career that would take her to refugee camps and disaster zones around the world. The Pentagon speaking engagement also provided Sarah with an opportunity to announce the latest expansion of Compass Rose International's programs. The organization was launching a new initiative focused specifically on veterans with classified backgrounds, addressing the unique challenges faced by former intelligence personnel, special operations soldiers, and others whose military experience couldn't be fully disclosed. The Classified Veterans Program represented a significant evolution in Compass Rose International's approach to veteran support. Sarah had recognized that veterans with classified backgrounds faced additional barriers in their civilian transitions, often struggling to communicate their value to employers without violating security requirements. The program included specialized training in translating classified experience into civilian terms, networking opportunities with security-cleared employers, and career counseling that addressed the psychological challenges of maintaining secrecy about significant professional accomplishments. Sarah's personal experience with classified work made her uniquely qualified to lead this program, and her success in building a meaningful civilian career despite security constraints provided a powerful example for other veterans facing similar challenges. The launch of the Classified Veterans Program generated significant interest from both veterans and employers. Major defense contractors, government agencies, and international organizations with security requirements began partnering with Compass Rose International to identify and recruit qualified veterans. The program's success was evident in the high placement rates achieved by participants and the positive feedback from employing organizations. Veterans in the program consistently reported that the specialized support had been crucial in helping them navigate the unique challenges of their transition. As Compass Rose International continued to grow and evolve, Sarah found herself increasingly focused on strategic leadership and policy advocacy rather than direct service delivery. The organization now employed hundreds of staff members worldwide and served thousands of veterans annually, requiring sophisticated management and governance structures. Despite her expanding responsibilities, Sarah remained committed to maintaining personal connections with the veterans served by Compass Rose International. She regularly visited program sites, attended graduation ceremonies, and participated in networking events that brought together veterans and potential employers. These direct interactions with veterans kept Sarah grounded in the mission that had driven her to establish Compass Rose International. Every success story reinforced her belief in the value of veteran contributions to civilian society, while every challenge highlighted areas where programs could be improved. The success of Sarah's Pentagon presentation and the launch of the Classified Veterans Program attracted the attention of senior government officials who were grappling with broader questions about national security and veteran integration. Within weeks of her Pentagon speech, Sarah received an invitation to testify before a congressional committee examining the strategic implications of veteran career transitions. The congressional hearing represented the culmination of Sarah's journey from harassment victim to nationally recognized policy expert. As she prepared her testimony, Sarah reflected on how the coordinates on her wrist had guided her from classified operations through workplace discrimination to this moment of national influence. The skills and experience that military personnel develop during their service are invaluable assets that can benefit our entire society, Sarah explained to the committee. However, these assets are often underutilized because we lack effective systems for helping veterans translate their military experience into civilian terms and find organizations that can benefit from their unique capabilities. Sarah's testimony was supported by compelling data from Compass Rose International's 5 years of operations. The organization had now placed over 2,000 veterans in meaningful civilian careers, with participants reporting significantly higher job satisfaction and career advancement rates compared to veterans who transitioned without specialized support. The committee was particularly interested in the strategic implications of veteran integration for national security. Sarah argued that supporting veterans' successful transition to civilian careers wasn't just a moral obligation, it was a security imperative that strengthened America's capacity to address complex global challenges. Veterans who find meaningful civilian careers become ambassadors for military service and continue contributing to national security in new ways, Sarah explained. They bring military perspectives to civilian organizations while developing new skills that can benefit future military operations. This creates a virtuous cycle that strengthens both our military and civilian institutions. The congressional hearing resulted in the passage of landmark legislation that provided federal funding for veteran career transition programs and created new partnerships between military organizations and civilian employers. The legislation, known as the Compass Rose Act in honor of Sarah's organization, represented a significant step forward in national veteran support policy. The Compass Rose Act also established Sarah as a leading voice in national discussions about veteran integration and military-civilian relations. She was appointed to the Department of Veterans Affairs Advisory Committee on Military to Civilian Transition, where she worked with other experts to develop new approaches to veteran support services. Sarah's policy work extended beyond domestic issues to international forums where she represented the United States at conferences, examining veteran integration challenges in other countries. Her presentations highlighted the innovative approaches developed by Compass Rose International while learning from successful programs in other nations. The international recognition of Sarah's work led to requests for assistance in establishing similar programs in allied countries. The first international expansion came when the Canadian government requested help developing career transition programs for their military veterans, followed by similar requests from Australia, the United Kingdom, and several European nations. Each international program required Sarah to adapt Compass Rose International's core methodologies to different cultural and political contexts while maintaining the fundamental principles that had made the organization successful. The projects provided valuable insights into the universal nature of veteran transition challenges and the importance of culturally appropriate solutions. The success of these international partnerships attracted attention from major humanitarian organizations that were seeking to improve their recruitment and retention of military veterans. The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, the World Food Program, and the International Committee of the Red Cross began working with Compass Rose International to develop specialized veteran recruitment programs. These partnerships resulted in the creation of dedicated career tracks that specifically targeted military veterans for positions in international development and humanitarian work. The programs addressed the unique challenges faced by veterans while highlighting the valuable skills and experience they brought to global service organizations. The impact of these initiatives was evident in both individual success stories and organizational transformations. Veterans who participated in the programs consistently reported finding greater purpose and meaning in their civilian careers, while employing organizations noted improvements in leadership development, crisis management capabilities, and operational effectiveness. As Compass Rose International's influence continued to expand, Sarah found herself balancing increasing demands for her expertise with her commitment to maintaining the organization's core mission. The challenge was scaling impact while preserving the personal touch that had made the organization effective from its earliest days. The solution came through developing a new generation of veteran advocates and program leaders who could carry forward Compass Rose International's mission. Sarah established a leadership development program that trained veterans who had successfully transitioned to civilian careers to become mentors and program coordinators for other transitioning service members. Marcus Webb had become one of the program's most effective leaders, using his corporate background and personal transformation story to build bridges between veteran communities and civilian employers. His work demonstrated the power of redemption and second chances while creating opportunities for meaningful dialogue about unconscious bias and workplace inclusion. The leadership development program also included several veterans who had participated in Compass Rose International's fellowship programs and had subsequently been hired by their host organizations. These alumni became powerful ambassadors for the value of veteran employees, while providing ongoing support for newly transitioning service members. As Sarah approached the 10-year anniversary of her departure from Henderson Associates, she was invited to deliver the keynote address at the National Veterans Day ceremony at Arlington National Cemetery. The invitation represented the highest possible recognition for her contributions to veteran advocacy and military-civilian relations. The address would provide Sarah with a platform to reflect on the broader themes of service, sacrifice, and transformation that had defined her journey. As she began preparing her remarks, Sarah knew that the coordinates on her wrist would guide her once again, helping her find the words to honor all veterans while inspiring continued progress toward a more inclusive and supportive society. Compass Rose had pointed her through classified operations, workplace discrimination, humanitarian work, and national advocacy. Now it was guiding her toward what she sensed would be the most important speech of her career, one that could influence how an entire nation understood and valued military service in all its forms. The Veterans Day ceremony at Arlington National Cemetery drew thousands of attendees, including military leaders, government officials, veteran advocates, and families who had lost loved ones in service to their country. As Sarah stood at the podium overlooking the sea of white headstones that stretched across the hallowed ground, she felt the full weight of the moment and the responsibility that came with it. 15 years ago, I stood in a corporate conference room while my colleagues mocked the tattoo on my wrist, Sarah began, her voice carrying clearly across the silent crowd. They saw meaningless symbols that they assumed represented some frivolous decision from my youth. They had no idea that those coordinates marked the exact location where their freedom had been protected by people willing to sacrifice everything in service to others. The crowd was completely silent, hanging on every word as Sarah continued her address. The speech would be broadcast live on national television and streamed online to millions of viewers around the world, making it one of the most widely heard Veterans Day addresses in history. The compass rose and coordinates on my wrist tell a story that I still cannot fully share, Sarah explained, touching her tattoo gently. But they represent thousands of similar stories carried by veterans who have returned to civilian life, bringing with them experiences that have shaped their character and capabilities in ways that most of us cannot imagine. Sarah's address wove together personal narrative with broader themes about the value of military service and the challenges faced by veterans transitioning to civilian careers. She spoke about the transformation that had occurred at Henderson Associates, the growth of Compass Rose International, and the changing national conversation about veteran integration. The harassment I experienced was painful and demoralizing, but it also taught me something crucial about the power of transformation, Sarah continued. People can change, organizations can evolve, and society can learn to better recognize and value the contributions of those who have served. The question is whether we have the courage to do the work required for that transformation. The most powerful moment of Sarah's address came when she spoke directly to the veterans in the audience, many of whom were struggling with their own transition challenges. Her words were both personal and universal, drawing on her extensive experience, while acknowledging the unique nature of each veteran's journey. Every veteran carries a compass within them, calibrated by service and refined by experience, Sarah said, looking directly into the cameras that would carry her words to veterans around the world. That compass has guided you through challenges that most people will never face, and it will continue to guide you toward meaningful work in civilian life. Trust that compass, follow its direction, and know that your service, whether classified or public, celebrated or invisible, has value that extends far beyond your individual experience. As Sarah concluded her address, the crowd rose in a sustained standing ovation that lasted several minutes. The response reflected not just appreciation for her words, but recognition of the broader transformation she represented, from harassment victim to national advocate, from silenced veteran to powerful voice for change. Following the ceremony, Sarah was approached by hundreds of veterans who wanted to share their own stories and thank her for giving voice to experiences they had struggled to articulate. The conversations continued for hours, each one reinforcing her belief in the importance of creating platforms for veteran voices and experiences. Among those who approached Sarah was a young Army veteran named Lieutenant Jennifer Walsh, who had recently completed her military service and was struggling to find direction in civilian life. Jennifer's experience paralleled Sarah's own transition challenges, complete with workplace discrimination and difficulty translating military experience into civilian terms. "Your speech gave me hope," Jennifer said during their conversation. "I've been feeling lost since I left the Army, but listening to you reminded me that this transition is just another mission, one that requires the same persistence and dedication that got me through military service." Sarah's conversation with Jennifer led to an immediate mentoring relationship and ultimately to Jennifer's participation in Compass Rose International's fellowship program. Within a year, Jennifer would be working as a program coordinator with the International Rescue Committee, using her military leadership experience to manage refugee resettlement operations. The Veterans Day address marked a turning point in national conversations about veteran issues and military-civilian relations. Sarah's speech was quoted extensively in media coverage and academic discussions, while video clips became viral content across social media platforms. The widespread attention also generated significant interest in Compass Rose International's programs, with the organization receiving thousands of inquiries from veterans seeking support and employers wanting to partner with the initiative. The response required Sarah to expand the organization's capacity while maintaining the quality and personal touch that had made it effective. As Sarah returned to her office the week following the Veterans Day ceremony, she found her desk covered with letters from veterans around the country who had been inspired by her address. Each letter told a different story, but the common themes were remarkably consistent: veterans seeking purpose, employers learning to value military experience, and communities working to bridge the gap between military and civilian cultures. One letter particularly caught Sarah's attention. It came from a group of students at Henderson Associates local high school who had watched her Veterans Day address and wanted to learn more about military service and veteran issues. The letter requested Sarah's participation in a Career Day program that would help students understand the value of military service and the challenges faced by transitioning veterans. The invitation from the high school students represented the next generation's engagement with veteran issues and suggested that Sarah's work was having impact beyond the immediate veteran community. Young people who grew up hearing her story would enter the workforce with different attitudes about military service and veteran employment. As Sarah looked toward the future, she saw unlimited potential for expanding the impact of veteran advocacy and integration programs. The coordinates on her wrist still marked the specific location where she had saved lives during her classified operations, but they now also represented the starting point for a movement that had transformed how society understood and valued Military service. The compass rose continued to point forward, guiding Sarah toward new challenges and opportunities to serve. The harassment that had begun 15 years earlier in a corporate conference room had ultimately led to national recognition, policy changes, and transformed lives for thousands of veterans. The story of Sarah's tattoo had become a powerful symbol of resilience, transformation, and the hidden strengths that many veterans carried into civilian life. Her journey from mockery to respect, from silence to advocacy, demonstrated that individual experiences of discrimination could be transformed into catalysts for broader social change. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us. Veterans. The program's success was evident in the high placement rates achieved by participants and the positive feedback from employing organizations. Veterans in the program consistently reported that the specialized support had been crucial in helping them navigate the unique challenges of their transition. Sarah's work with classified veterans also led to her being consulted by government agencies seeking to improve their own veteran recruitment and retention programs. Her insights into the challenges faced by veterans with security clearances proved valuable in developing more effective policies and procedures. As Compass Rose International continued to grow and evolve, Sarah found herself increasingly focused on strategic leadership and policy advocacy rather than direct service delivery. The organization now employed hundreds of staff members worldwide and served thousands of veterans annually, requiring sophisticated management and governance structures. Despite her expanding responsibilities, Sarah remained committed to maintaining personal connections with the veterans served by Compass Rose International. She regularly visited program sites, attended graduation ceremonies, and participated in networking events that brought together veterans and potential employers. These direct interactions with veterans kept Sarah grounded in the mission that had driven her to establish Compass Rose International. Every success story reinforced her belief in the value of veteran contributions to civilian society, while every challenge highlighted areas where programs could be improved. Sarah's legacy extended far beyond the specific accomplishments of Compass Rose International. Her work had influenced policy at the national and international levels, changed organizational practices in hundreds of companies and agencies, and inspired a new generation of veteran advocates to pursue similar work. The tattoo on Sarah's wrist had become a symbol not just of her personal journey, but of the broader transformation in how society understood and valued military service. The coordinates still marked the specific location where she had saved lives during her classified operations, but they now also represented the countless lives that had been improved through her civilian advocacy work. The Compass Rose continued to guide Sarah forward, pointing toward new challenges and opportunities to serve. As she looked toward the future, she saw unlimited potential for expanding veteran support services, creating new pathways for post-military careers, and building stronger connections between military and civilian communities. Sarah's story had become a powerful testament to the possibility of transforming personal adversity into professional purpose. The harassment she had experienced at Henderson Associates had been painful and demoralizing, but it had also catalyzed a journey that had led to meaningful work and significant impact. The mockery of her tattoo had ultimately become the foundation for a career dedicated to helping other veterans find respect, purpose, and success in their civilian transitions. The coordinates and compass rose that had once been sources of pain had become symbols of hope and direction for thousands of veterans around the world. As Sarah concluded her Pentagon presentation and prepared for the next phase of her work with Compass Rose International, she reflected on the unexpected ways that her journey had unfolded. The path from harassment victim to internationally recognized veteran advocate had been challenging and unpredictable, but it had also been deeply fulfilling and meaningful. The story of Sarah's tattoo would continue to inspire other veterans, facing their own transition challenges, demonstrating that with persistence, creativity, and commitment to service, it was possible to build civilian careers that honored both military experience and personal values. The compass within each veteran could indeed guide them toward meaningful work and positive impact, just as it had guided Sarah through her own remarkable journey of transformation and service. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.